Hey, this is Jeremy from Nuxt 3 Tutorials. In Nuxt 3, there's an extensive directory, right? And we're going to talk about the directory structure of Nuxt 3. Now, it can be quite intimidating when you're just starting off because you see all these directories, but when you're just starting off, you really don't have this many directories, but it's pretty simple. And we're just going to go through the list of what the folders or directories, what they do, right? So this .nuxt here, and you can actually find this information on the Nuxt website itself. So the way this works, right, is that the .nuxt is the directory in development to generate your Vue application. This is automatically generated, so you don't have to touch it or do anything with it, so don't mess with it. The same thing with this. This output is the directory when building your application for production. So yeah, don't touch the files in here. When you run Nuxt build, this is where the directory, your Nuxt application goes. The assets folder is where you add all your website assets that the build to will process. Nuxt 3 uses Vite and not Webpack. So your style sheets, your fonts, and your images that are not served in the public folder. So let's say we go here. Let me see if I'm in the right place. Yeah, here. So I have assets here, and I have all these directories, links to styles. So these styles, these are the styles of the whole, for the whole application right here in assets. Then we have components, a pretty important directory. This is where all your components go. So as you can see, I have several Nuxt 3 components here, and this is where all your components go, and they're automatically imported into your Nuxt application, so you don't have to import them. You don't have to write any import statement down here to import. All this importing here, this is we're importing some types because we're using TypeScript. Also importing this is like a Nuxt module. All right, the next one is the Composables, and let me see if I'm skipping anything. No. So the Composables, here it says Nuxt uses the Composable directory to automatically import your Vue Composables into your application using auto imports. But like, what is a Composable? A Composable really is just a function that you can use throughout your Nuxt application. That's all it is. You know, so I have two Composables here. They have several functions which you can call from any place in your Nuxt application. And so this is what your Composables does. This IAM folder directory, this is not from Nuxt. This is just a directory that I created, which does whatever we do here. This is for identity and authentication, you know. All right, so we have also layouts here, but let's see if we're skipping something else. So we have content. Content, I've never used it before, I don't think, not in Nuxt 3. It reads the content directory in your project and parses this is Markdown, YAML, and CSV and JSON. This is like if you're building a content management system, or if your Nuxt application has a lot of content. I've never used it myself, and I believe Nuxt has a module for content called Nuxt Content, I believe. All right, your layout is actually you see how we have something like this on top here. So your layout is something like that. Let me try to see if I can look at the picture here. If I go to localhost, I think I'm running an app. So let's say here, right, like this is a layout here. As you can see, we have this doesn't change. Do you see that? So this here is a layout, and if we take a look at the code, this is the default layout. So you have this navbar, you have this dashboard header, then you have this slot. This is where the app goes. When we examine the app, the main app right there, we have this layout which covers the app. So that's how layouts work in Nuxt 3. All right, so the next part, this is the node modules. The node modules are the all the different programs, applications that you download from npm that we need to make Nuxt work. You know, so we have all these here, and whatever npm modules which are just like programs, you know, functions that you can add to make your application work, they're gonna go here. So we really don't touch this node modules, you know, full directory at all. Okay, so right there, node module. Oh yeah, the middleware and the modules too. The middleware, Nuxt provides a customizable root middleware framework so you can use throughout your application. So what the middleware does, we don't have one here because we don't need to use it. The middleware is actually whenever you go from route to route like this. See, I'm going to sample, and then I'm going to Nuxt IAM, and then I'm going to home, all this. So before we go from one page to another, right, we go through middleware. So if you want to do something before you move from one page to another, you can put that function in the middleware. That's why that middleware exists. Like authentication, I tried to do that before, but because the authentication that I created for this app actually, like, it goes into the back end, and for some reason it doesn't quite work on the front end as well. I think because we have to wait for the database to check the cookies and stuff like that, and so it doesn't really work very well, you know. So, but maybe I was doing something wrong. So that's what the middleware is for. And then let's go here. The modules, Nuxt comes with its modules that if you create your own modules, they would go there. I haven't done that yet. So that's what the module is for. Pages is a pretty important directory, and we have several pages here. So when you look at this right here, each of these is a particular page. So the way this works is we have pages, and you see here we have contact, index, protected, sample, and these are the pages that you're seeing right here. So the pages directory contains all your Nuxt 3 pages, and they're on the front end. Yeah, on the front end, and that's pretty much it. The plugins, this is a directory where you add your Nuxt 3 plugin. Now, what is a plugin? A plugin is essentially like a function or code that you can add to your Nuxt app. Here's an example plugin here, right? So this is, we import from Day.js, which is a tool for manipulating dates and working with dates. And so the way you write your plugin is like this. So this is the Nuxt app, your application, and then today we get today's date, and then we say Nuxt app.today today. So this function is plugged into the Nuxt application right here, and we can see how it's working. I think on the sample, is this here? No, it's here. So this comes from the plugin. So that's that plugin that we used here. Okay. Let me look at the directories here. Then we have public directories. It directly serve at the root contains public files that have to keep their names, robots.txt. So this is a little bit like assets, but I think it's not built. So things like your favicon, you know, the little icon like that would go there in your Nuxt 3 public folder. I'm not using one here. All right, and then I'm using Prisma. Prisma is not a Nuxt 3 directory. It's because we're using Prisma, which is an ORM, an object relational mapper, which helps us work with databases. So this is not a Nuxt 3 directory. Server is a quite important directory. This is a Nuxt 3 directory as well. And server is actually what holds your backend for Nuxt 3. So it allows you to create your API and the middleware. Middleware is a Nuxt 3 directory which goes into server. The middleware is like the middleware for the front end. This middleware up here will be for the front end, but this one is for the server. So when you're, say you access a route in this backend, like an API endpoint, you would before we get to that, we'd go through the middleware. So whatever, like here I have an authentication middleware here, right? So it just checks like what your whatever route you're trying to get to, we're gonna check if it needs authentication, you know. So we go through this stuff here to make sure that we are authenticated. So that's what the middleware does. And I have several middleware here. Like for logs, we are just checking every request, as you can see here, right? We're checking all these things, you know. So all this stuff. Yeah. So server, if you go to the Nuxt, they tell you that server has 3 directories in it. There's API, there's routes, and there's middleware. And each function, so API is like an API. Nuxt 3 can be used to build an API. It's not that hard. Middleware, we talked about it, and then routes it's like the way websites used to work in the past. You know, where the routes are on the server. Yeah, something like that. All right, and then utils, I've never used this before, but it's Nuxt 3 uses utils directory to automatically import helper functions. So if you need like helper functions, you can place them in utils. I created a helper functions here, but maybe I should have done it on the front end. I don't know. I mean, here, I don't know if this will work for both like the front end and the back end. Like, can you have node code here? I don't know yet. You know, so I don't know if it's both like front end or just for the back end, or both. And then .env, it's a pretty important file. So this is where you keep all your. So I have a .env example here because this one has like real, environment variables in it. But so .env it looks like this, but .env is where you keep like all your variables that you need to use throughout your applications, but they're secret variables and you don't want to share them when you share to say like GitHub, you know. So this is where we have like our database URL, access tokens for authentication. I know that this can be changed easily, you know. Public URL, email, and stuff like that. So that's what your .env is for. Now, let me see what the directory says here. So we have git ignore, which is where you want to put all the directories and files that you don't want to Git to send to GitHub or to monitor, you know. So like .env definitely wants to be there, you know. All right, and then there's Nuxt ignore here, which I don't use. Let's ignore layouts pages during the build phase. Okay, subject to some specifications again, ignore. Okay, so I've never used this before, but I guess it can ignore some of the some directories that you don't need to build during the build phase. I think it'll make it build faster, maybe. All right. And then we have the app.view is actually your Nuxt application itself. But before that, there's app.config. Nuxt 3 provides an app.config file to expose reactive configuration with your application with the application time. Oh, that's pretty nice. I've never used this before. That's new to me. All right, so it's app.config, reactive configuration. Cool. Then there's app.view. This is the main component of your Nuxt 3 application. And so we use Nuxt page here because we're using like multiple pages. But if all you have is like one thing, then it's just like one single page app. All right, and then we have error.view here, but this is not part of. It's not really like well, error.view, if you have like a 404 error, and if you have error.view here, Nuxt will show this page instead of your 404, which can actually help. So for example, if I'm here and then I go to a page that doesn't exist, instead of your standard 404 error, you will have this, which I think looks pretty nice, and you can customize it, you know, any way that you want. All right, so moving along here, you have your Nuxt config. This allows you to we can connect to the .env file from here. So all those .env variables here, we can link them to here, and then from here we can connect them to the different parts of Nuxt. This is what the Nuxt config, and it does like modules and stuff. This is a pretty important file here. And then you have your package.json, which is where it lists all your dependencies and scripts, so you don't really mess with this, you know, unless you want to like change, you know, the name of your package for npm. All right, excuse me. README, you don't. That's not part of Nuxt. Then you have the ts config. Nuxt automatically generated ts config file with the resolved aliases you're using in your Nuxt project, as well as with other sensible defaults. Do I have that here? Yeah, I do have that. I never really had to use this, you know, and that's really about it. I'm using Yarn, so you have Yarn here. So Nuxt 3 is designed so that, you know, it's a small file and you can add the directories as you want, as you need, but it can be quite intimidating if you don't know like what you're doing. So I hope this video did help. And so if you want to see this, this is a Nuxt 3 like authenticated application. It's completely free to you. It's a full-fledged Nuxt 3 app, and many people have already checked it out and downloaded it. If you want it, you can have it for free. It's yours, absolutely free. Just click the link below this video. If you don't get it, just, you know, get in touch with me. Just send a message down here below this video. So, and that's about it with Nuxt 3 directories, you know. Hope you like this video. Talk to you soon.